everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Tuesdays. I am Jacob Fowler here with eXp Realty in Oregon and Washington State. Today, I just want to do a kind of a quicker video where we talk about the home inspection. So as a buyer and as a seller, you'll be dealing with the home inspection 9 times out of 10. Yes, every once in a while, you will find a buyer that waives the inspection. But I never advise it, and it's pretty rare. The only circumstances in which I advise for a buyer to potentially waive a home inspection is if the seller has provided one that was completed within the last 60 days. But even then, I typically leave it up to them on how satisfied they are with the report. But we'll dive in. So for the buyer's home inspection, I think it's really important to note that, yes, you can be present, and we want you present. We want you to see the things that we're talking about and learning about. Be mindful, though. The inspector allots a certain amount of time to be at the property, and they get kind of a flow going of what they're doing, and they can't lose track of where they've been and what they need to do next. So it's very important that unless the inspector comes over to you during the inspection and says, hey, come look at this, kind of stay to the side, stay out of it. There will be time at the end where the inspector, he or she, will go over the inspection report with you and answer any of your questions, as well as go back and point out the issues they're talking about. That's when you ask questions. If you're constantly following the inspector around saying, oh, what about this? What about this? Did you check the furnace? Did you notice this little crack over here? You're really not being helpful. In all honesty, you're actually being kind of a hindrance. And if you think that you're going to be that person and you're worried about being that person, totally cool. Just let me know beforehand, and we're going to go ahead and schedule you to show up for the inspection midway through. That way that you're not sitting around bored. I will be completely honest with you. Inspections are one of the most boring things I do. Some people don't like it, but in all honesty, 9 times out of 10, I sit at the kitchen table and I read a book or I catch up on emails. I'm just hanging out for about an hour and a half to 2 hours before the inspector is actually ready to talk to me and ready to talk to you about the overall condition of the property. So the inspection, it's not super fun. And like I said, you need to be cognizant and remember the inspector is there for a job. You've paid for a certain amount of time. They have a flow. Let them complete their job before you start coming at them with questions. It's just going to make the process go a lot easier, and they're going to be able to answer your questions a lot more thoroughly because they'll actually have the information. They will have looked at what you're talking about. That being said, one of the most common things I see in the inspection situation is the buyer instantly jumps to, well, how much is that going to cost? Some inspectors can give you an idea. Most of them cannot, though, and even if they can, they're not going to. Why? Because it's a liability issue for them. They're not going to say, oh, this problem is going to cost X number of dollars to fix. It's not a big deal, because then when you get a quote 6 months from now because you've closed on this house and the quote is, Y number of dollars higher than X, you're going to come back and say, well, wait a minute, you told me, and now we're in a position where you're potentially trying to sue, or you're going after their insurance bond, things like that. It's not good for anybody. So some inspectors are going to do the exact same thing I'm going to do for you, and we're going to give you a ballpark range of the absolute minimum it's going to cost versus some astronomical number that is 15% higher than the maximum I think it's going to cost. And it's helpful to an extent because it gives you a range, but no one's going to be able to dial it in and drill it down on a number until you actually have a contractor come in. And that is why we always give you the opportunity to say, okay, this is what we found out is wrong. We have X number of days left on our inspection. Do you want to get a contractor in here for estimates and bids? If you do want to do that, most contractors these days are starting to charge a fee for that because it's, they're not guaranteed any income. I'll give you the estimate and bid because you haven't even closed on the house yet, so there is likely going to be an additional fee. For doing that, I do highly recommend that you take that option. It's kind of cheap insurance, just like the inspection itself. We've noticed that inspections have gone up pretty significantly in price over the last couple of years. When I started out in this industry, you could typically get a home inspection for around $250. Now it's pretty rare to see one for under $450, and they typically price those based off square footage and additional outbuildings. So the inspections I do with my clients, I typically see anywhere from $450 to a little over $1,000 total price for the inspection. Like I said, that's based off square footage and additional structures on the property. Beyond that, the inspector can only tell you so much. So when we go through a house, we can't cause any damage to the house unless you're going to pay to repair that damage, and those are also specialized inspectors. So like when we're doing things like testing for lead-based paint and doing core samples out of the wall, you are going to be obligated, should you choose to do that, to then repair that wall if you don't close on the home. So that can be an additional cost. Most traditional home inspections are not going to do those types of things. I had a buyer once who wasn't my buyer, is actually my listing, where the buyer's agent came to me and said, hey, we found a little bit of dry rot here. We'd like to cut into the wall and see how far it goes. And I said, okay, you're more than welcome to cut into the wall and see how far it goes. You need to sign this paperwork that says that you're going to repair all the damage that you cause by doing that, should you not close. And then they were just totally taken aback that, oh, what do you mean? We can't just leave a giant hole in the sheetrock? They didn't want to do it. So at that point, we canceled that part of the inspection that they wanted to do. So there are things you need to note with doing invasive inspections, and typically those are going to be outlined in the original purchase and sales agreement, that we're doing a traditional inspection, which means kind of eyeball only. We're looking at it. We're anything we can touch and feel surface-wise, we're inspecting. We're not doing deep dives. We're not cutting into the walls. We're not opening up pipes. We're not, diving into the wiring and testing every little hot spot on the wires. Those aren't things we can do without being invasive and potentially causing damage to the property. So it's just an important thing to remember that your inspection is going to be a, look but don't touch style thing. So you will get a lot of details from your home inspection report, but unfortunately, issues do still come up down the road, and that's just part of being a homeowner that you need to plan for. Ideally, if it's not surface level yet, it's not going to cause a problem for 6 months, a year, 2 years, down the road. And as a homeowner, you should be budgeting every month a kind of a nest egg for home repairs down the road. Another common thing that you're going to see in a home inspection report that I think we need to address is that they are always going to tell you hot water heater, furnace, those types of appliances, or systems, when they were installed, or at least when they were manufactured. And unfortunately, with those, they have what's called a useful lifespan. And pretty much anything older than 10 years is going to be labeled as at the end of its useful life. Inspector recommends, budgeting for replacement soon. And that's a disclaimer. They have to say that, and I totally understand why they do it, but unfortunately it scares a lot of buyers, and they come back and say, oh, and we want you to put in a new HVAC and a hot water heater before we'll close on this house. And the seller says, well, hell no, it's all working fine. I'm not replacing it. So it's something to remember when you're asking for things. Just because it's dated or old, if it's still functional, if it's working, most sellers are not going to just upgrade you. And in those situations, my advice to buyers is, rather than saying, hey, replace this hot water heater, replace this furnace, it's old, we kind of get a list going of all the potential fixes we have coming up, and we try to assign a dollar amount to them. And at that point, we go to the seller and say, hey, rather than calling out each of these individual items, we've noticed that a lot of the items in this house are towards the end of their useful lifespan. So rather than asking for you to replace those, since they're not actually broken yet, but they're likely to break soon, along with these other damages that are current problems, here's the monetary value we've assessed. We'd like it in the form of a credit, a rate buy down, or a price reduction. You're going to go a lot further with that than by demanding all these repairs for things that aren't actually, or replacements for things that are still functional. Another thing to note, the appraisal and the home inspection are two totally different things. People always think, why do I need a home inspection? The appraiser is going to call it out anyway. That is not true. The appraiser cares about the value of the property, not necessarily the condition. The exceptions to those are that, yes, on FHA and VA loans, anything that is a safety hazard, so if you have exposed wiring, if there's like a banister missing on a stairwell, if you need a rail around the deck because of a certain height, or a banister because it's 2 steps down off of the deck kind of thing, it's not there, safety, health issues, mold, those are the things that the appraiser will call out on VA and FHA loans. Less likely on a conventional loan, because it's not a government-backed loan. It falls into a different category with a different set of rules. But the appraisal is not the home inspection. The appraiser is not looking for, how much water you're getting out of the faucet. It's not looking for, how old the hot water heater is, or the temperature the hot water heater reaches. It's not looking for every electrical outlet working properly. those are the kinds of things that the appraiser is not actively seeking out. The appraiser is simply there on behalf of the bank to make sure that should you default on your mortgage, the bank can recover their money. Anyway, so that's kind of a condensed version of the inspection and kind of what we're doing with it and how to partake in the inspection process. Please remember to always get your inspection done sooner rather than later. I can't count how many clients I have who just cannot make the schedule work with an inspector because they want to be there and present, and then it's the last day of the inspection period, and that's when they can get their inspection done. And now we have 3 hours to not only read this entire inspection report, which is typically over 100 pages long, but to also then decide any negotiating points, submit it, and kind of attack the seller all at once, which creates a very hostile situation. I don't recommend it. So when your inspection period is 7 days, get the inspection done in the first 2 to 3 days of that so you have time to think and get bids and estimates. If it's 10 days, still recommend within the first 5 days we get the inspection done so we have time to get bids and estimates, so we have time to make decisions, and so that it all runs more smoothly. Don't take up that full time just to get your inspection, because especially in resale homes, older homes, I sell homes that were built in 1890 here in this area. Those are homes where we're typically going to have more than one inspector come in to give us an accurate picture of the final condition of the home. So I hope this is helpful. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We can always do a deep dive on home inspections at your buyer consultation. Please feel free to reach out if you are looking to buy or sell in Oregon or Washington in the next 12 months. And if you're looking in the rest of the country, also reach out because I am happy to provide you a referral. As always, please like and follow. It's a super big help for me. I hope you guys have a great week. I'll see you back here. Bye.